there's quite a prospect heights.
Well, you know the process there, you got to create a special.
Good morning, everybody. I'm Bob Corvus, chairman of the Prospect Heights Water Committee, and I'm welcoming the residents that are here today, as well as you who are going to see this on video. This is the 2017 Water Forum, and we have some speakers for you today. And without further ado, let me bring up our first speaker. This is George Roadcap, and he's with the Illinois Water Survey. George, please welcome him.
All right.
Thank you for coming.
Thank you. All right. Thank you for having me. I work, the Illinois State Water Survey studies water across the state of all kinds, surface water, groundwater. I'm in their groundwater section, and I work all over the state, but I also am kind of our point person for a lot of things in Cook County and Lake County, as well as Kane. So we get up here a lot, even though we're in Champaign, and you know, doing field work or studies or whatnot. So I should have labeled this Prospect Heights, because when I found out that we were in Prospect Heights, it's like, oh, after I rolled my eyes. No, we kind of have a special color for Prospect Heights, and I'll explain that in a second. We had to expand our color palette. And unfortunately, it doesn't show up in this with this light, but this is a map we put on our website, and you can see it shows where each of the communities in the Chicago area get their water. And so the big blue is the Lake Michigan allocation, of course. Let's see if this works. And we have Aurora and Elgin that are on the Fox River, and Wilmington that's on the Kankakee. But then all the yellows and gold colors are all communities that are on groundwater. Some are shallow, some are deep. A lot of deep use down in the Joliet area, some in Kane County, some in Lake County like Lake Zurich, and then a lot of more sand and gravel communities in Lake County and McHenry County. And there are quite a few on the limestone still in Will County and kind of mixed in everywhere. So the color you can't see is purple, and the only purple is Prospect Heights. So that's why we had to expand our color palette here. So here's Prospect Heights. That should be looking purple, because it's a community that gets water from groundwater as well as Lake Michigan. So we had to have a different color. So this is by community, not by system. So we wanted to show it on a community level, because that's what a lot of people think about. And I'll show that in a minute. Regionally, we have a couple of different aquifers. So we talk about the deep aquifer. That's kind of one that's been making the press more recently, because we actually have what we call a Conner depression or drawdown. We have the largest drawdowns in the country. So you hear about the Ogallala going dry or other things. We've got that beat by quite a bit in Joliet, which is kind of the center of the problem. So we're up here in Prospect Heights. And so there's multiple layers. At the top, there's this orange, which is sand and gravel, and then this SD, which is a dolomite, the slurry dolomite. And that's what the private wells in here are completed into. And then you get some shale layers that cut off groundwater flow, and then you get down into some of the deep sandstones. So when Mount Prospect was using groundwater, they were using the deep sandstones, and their wells were like 2,000 feet deep. So that's kind of the geology. Here's that Conner depression, or lowering in the water levels. So in the Joliet area, water levels are some 300 feet below sea level. So they've fallen down that much. In this area, you'd have to go down to an elevation of about 200 feet to get to the water level in that sandstone. So you'd have to drill, what is it, about 500 feet to get down there, just to get to the water. But yeah, the well would actually have to be deeper. So You know, it's still used by golf courses. I think this golf course has one. And kind of a lot of golf courses in Lake County, and then as you go west, more of the communities. We've done studies of the limestone that the private wells are in, by and large, and this is a map showing which way groundwater is flowing, and essentially water here is flowing to the east towards Lake Michigan. And it kind of bends around what's called the Des Plaines disturbance. That's not named after my roommate in high school or college that was a little disturbed from Des Plaines, but that's where the rocks are all kind of jumbled up and it affects the flow field. So we're right up in here. Groundwater's flowing towards Lake Michigan and out offshore somewhere. We're not exactly sure where it's going. Oh, and here's just a close-up of that. So you can look at the map and say, okay, well, water levels in this area should be, you know, at an elevation of about 620. So you can look at your land surface elevation of your house and figure out how deep you have to go to get to water.
Question.
Yeah.
Is it okay to ask a question?
Sure.
So I always had the impression that our aquifer or whatever is static water. You're saying that it's flowing.
Yes.
Really?
Not very fast.
Okay.
You know, it would
So
take.
it's moving through. In other
Yeah.
words, we're getting water from someplace else that.
Yes, you are getting water from the western part of the county. So you're getting water just west of here. It's infiltrating, and it could be infiltrating here as well, but adding to that flow system. So the high point is this groundwater divide between the Fox River and the Des Plaines and Lake Michigan. So, yeah.
I thought it was just like a big pool down there.
No. It's moving all around, and it moves around as different people use it and stuff. So I'll skip that. There's a lot of water quality problems with private wells. I'm not going to go into those. There's plenty of guys here that'll tell you about that. I do want to give one overall trend, though, that we're looking at, in addition to all the individual well problems, and that's road salt, or just increasing chlorides in general. These are plots from Will County and Kane County, and on the scale here is chloride from 0 to 250 and 0 to 250, and you see from 1960 to 2014 that there's a clear trend in chlorides, and they're just shooting up. So this is making a lot of wells, it's all soften, a lot of city wells, I should say, just over the chloride limit for the drinking water standard. So some communities, such as Geneva, have gone on a complete RO system for the whole town. And that gets expensive if you know about reverse osmosis. So what are we doing? We're doing things like drilling observation wells and stuff. That's kind of that big operation there. This is for a 1,200-foot well down southwest of Joliet. And I did want to talk about some of the data if we have for Prospect Heights. If you want to look up information on your own wells or kind of some of the information that we've put on the internet, what IEPA has put on the internet, there's quite a bit of information there. So at the State Water Survey, we're more interested in public use and aquifers. We also have this private well class where you can go on and learn stuff about private wells. The State Geological Survey has their ill water database, which is online well logs, and you can get information from there. We're in the process of improving some of that. IEPA has information on drinking water watch and the public systems, but it also has information on all the sites that IEPA has worked at. So if there's a dry cleaner or a gas station or something, and you're wondering what's going on there, that information is all online now. It's incredible. So one of the maps we have on our website now is the Lake Michigan distribution system. And so we, connect communities. It's not the actual pipelines. So if we zoom in, so Prospect Heights is in here somewhere. So if we zoom in, you can click on the community and it'll tell you where they get their water from. So this is Prospect Heights. So you see it's, we call it a mixed because some of the community is served by Illinois American, one of the Illinois American subdivisions. So we say, some of it's on Lake Michigan, and then the rest is on groundwater on the shallow bedrock by and large. So there's the great preponderance of the private wells are on that. And then you can also click on the link here, this arrow that's going towards Illinois American Chicago Suburban Subdivision, and it gives you the IEPA numbers if you want to look up water quality on the IEPA website. But then we also tell you how much water was provided to that. So we keep track of water use and who's using what. So you can click on any of these arrows and it will tell you, how much Mount Prospect is using or whoever. On the groundwater side, we have information on all the wells in the state, and you can see, there's a lot in this area. Now, not all of them are active. We're going to purge the inactive ones, but then there's a lot that are standby. So a lot of communities will switch to lake water, but they'll keep their wells as standby, such as Mount Prospect. So if we zoom into where we're at here, here's Old Orchard Country Club, and the green isn't showing up, but here's Palatine Road. Rand Road is right here. So these are community wells in the region. Many of them are 1,400, 1,900 feet deep. Those are all in the deep sandstone. But there are quite a few shallower ones too. So here's Mount Prospect, number 17, I think, 1,900 feet deep. And if we click on that, you can start pulling up information on it, what our ID is, what the well log is, and so you can get all this information on the well if you're interested. You can also click on it, and it'll have what Mount Prospect has reported to us that the well has used. And so they still use the well, but you can see it's only 1 million gallons in a whole year. So they've just turned it on to test it and make sure the pump still works. They probably ran it for 3 hours and shut it off and came back 6 months later and ran it for 3 hours. So that's typically what we see is very little water use. But their emergency backup, although if Rahm Emanuel keeps raising water rates, some of these communities are more interested in going back to groundwater. So there's a lot of interest in that recently because the water rates have gone up. We also show some statistics on water levels. This is some new things we're putting up on sort of average well depth, average depth to water and things like that. So a homeowner can kind of expect, well, if I'm going to move into this area, just kind of what do I expect? So, you can see, well, some of this matches elevation pretty well. So the people that live up on top of the moraines have to drill deeper. But you see, like in Prospect Heights, we're in the 150 to 200 range. So statistically, that's where the preponderance of wells are. It really gets carried away in western Kane County and Kendall County, where they're all going to the 600-foot wells down to the sandstone, which are a lot more expensive. Average depth of water, my colors aren't showing up very well, but it's in the 50 to 75 range in here. So those are the water levels reported on the well logs to us. Well density, you can see where the Silurian dolomite is, there's a lot of private wells. So it's very productive, and so there's a long history of a lot of private wells being on this aquifer. As you get up into Lake and McHenry County, these are more sand and gravel wells as well. So, And these maps are statewide, so you can kind of, you know, if you have a statewide perspective, you can kind of get an idea of, you know, who's using what, where, and how. There's our ill water database. If none of you have seen this, this is all our well logs. This is actually on the State Geological Survey's webpage. But I zoomed in on Prospect Heights here, and you see this big lumping of blue. That means there's a lot of private wells here. And you know, you go south or east, and you know, it's not nearly as dense. So it gives you an idea that there's still a lot of people using groundwater here. So we can zoom in. Here's Old Orchard Country Club. So you can see they have a 1,300-foot well here. And you can see a lot of homes to the north. A lot of these aren't located very well, so you see they fall right on the center of 10-acre plots. That's why they kind of show up in line. So we don't actually go out and physically locate each well. The newer ones are coming in with GPS coordinates, which makes life a lot easier. If we have the GPS coordinates, then we know exactly where they are. So you can like draw a box around there and highlight these wells, and then it'll tell you who drilled the well, where it is. It's that long. I see a Snelton well here. Not giving you a plug. I'm just you know, who drilled the well, how deep it is, what formation it's in. And then if we click on one of these, I'm just going through screenshots of everything. If this was live, there's always a chance that Wi-Fi doesn't work and everything else. So, oh, you could also zoom in and look at an aerial photo if this is your house, and boom, there it is. But you see like this cluster of 4 wells. They're all in the center of the 10-acre section or subsection. So you got to be a little careful with the location information. But this is, so all that well log information that the drillers provide us is put into a database, and it auto populates this form that tells you what the geologic formations are. Yeah.
How far back does your data go?
Yeah. Do you guys show the history of the water table over time, whether it's
Well, the well logs we have in our database go back to 1800s, some of them.
wow.
Yeah. Some of those early logs aren't very good, but others, some are.
The reason I was asking, there was a gentleman who I don't think is here right now that was asking, he's moved in, and he has absolutely no clue as to what he's got, you know, for his well depth. And so your database, in theory, should be able to provide him with that information.
Yeah, if the driller submitted a log and the county health department submitted it to us, then we should have it. But we only, statewide, we only bat about 40% on having that. You know, some of them are hand-driven well points that we don't have, or something else. There's a lot of reasons we don't have them, but you know, it varies by driller. Some never report and others do. So some are great, some are not so great.
So does your data show, is there a way to look at the history of whether the water
There can be.
going up or going down?
We have dedicated observation wells that we measure water levels in, but in a case like Prospect Heights, you might want to look through all the old logs and kind of get an idea of, well, okay, these wells in the 50s, you know, it was 70 feet to water. Now these newer ones, you know, if they're 90, then that tells you something. If they're still 70, then that tells you something else. So my guess is they haven't seen much change here. There's a lot of private wells kind of clustered together that may interfere with themselves, but regionally you're probably not going to see that kind of decline. Not like we do in other areas of Northeast Illinois. The new thing, for those of you familiar with this website, is we started adding scans of the driller's logs. So the actual scan, instead of just getting a summary, you can actually get the well log itself. So that often has the name of the person, the driller, the address. Sometimes it's a lot number or something. So sometimes you need to know that kind of stuff. A lot of these are drilled before the house is even, or before all the streets are named and all that kind of stuff. But you know, because a lot of them are drilled by developers and things like that, or at least they were in the past. And then the permit is also on here, so there's a little more information on the permit. So we're trying to get all that online. Yes?
Yeah, I probably should have asked this earlier, but, we've been in Prospect Heights for 53 years, and there was farming going on when we first moved here.
Mm-hmm.
Now, how long is farm contamination runoff affect the aquifer? You say it's always in a flux, it's moving.
Yeah.
Does it ever clear itself, or are we gonna have this?
Yeah, that's a tough question to answer because it depends on the geology. I mean, the chemistry you see in the well is unlikely to change because it's largely a result of the rock itself dissolving and precipitating. And so, you know, if you get a lot of new water, well, there's been a constant state of new water coming in for the last 10,000 years since the glacier left. But, you know, that chemistry kind of establishes itself, and 90% of it is, you know, what's in the rock, it's interaction. So, you know, if you have a sulfur problem or iron problem, that's not going to get flushed out. That'll just be there because that's based on the mineralogy of the aquifer. Farm contamination, you know, it depends on what's held up in the soil. In that whole field, there's a lot of dispute about what's going on. You know, we've never known nitrate to be a problem up here. You know, and there can be some natural nitrate, but
What was the question?
How long farm, if there was contamination from farm chemicals, how long it would take to flush out. And I wouldn't necessarily point the finger at farming because suburbanites can dump a lot of chemicals on their own lawns, you know. So I'd be more worried about that than what's passed from the farms.
Have you done any tests on wells around this area, and if so, what are there a lot of nitrates? What are we looking for problems in our wells?
There have been a lot of well tests. Like if you just look at Prospect Heights, I mean, in our database, I think I can actually show it in an animation. Well, there's probably at least 30 or 40 water samples in our database, and I don't know what they say offhand. Our database tends to be a little skewed though, because we tend to get samples sent to us from people that have problems. So, you know, it's like people have a problem, we'll send it to the water survey and see what it says. You know, so if the water's clean or something, then we don't get that. So, yeah.
I can add to that a little bit.
Yeah.
Because we're still drilling wells in the area. When we drill a well, we gotta get our water samples, we gotta get everything tested. And for all the tests, you know, we can't sign off on a well unless it passed the water inspection. And we test for the nitrates, coliforms, fecal bacteria, you know, just stuff that's bad for you. Haven't had any of that reoccurring problems in our recent history of drilling wells in the area.
Wonderful.
Yeah.
We've tested a lot of wells to the EPA standards in Prospect Heights. The EPA tells every well owner that you should test your well for a barrage of water tests, which includes VOCs, which is volatile organic compounds, and a lot of other things. And literally we've had nothing come back in the Prospect Heights area. I mean, it's the water as far as consuming goes on the tests that we've shown, the water's been absolutely fantastic. The aesthetic side of things is the only issue that people have had. And those aesthetics don't affect your health. So as far as the purity goes, we've seen it very, very good.
What do you mean by aesthetics?
Aesthetics is the iron staining, the orange, the calcium with the white film, the rotten egg smell, which is usually iron bacteria.
Okay.
Those are the things that we see predominant here. That's just aesthetically an issue.
Okay.
But we've literally done probably 60 full EPA tests that's done through an independent lab, and the water's been really phenomenal.
Wonderful.
Yeah, let me just summarize it kind of two ways. There's the health department requirements that he's talking about, where if it has nitrate or coliform, you know, something's getting down there, something's kind of short-circuiting all the natural filtration, or it's gotten down there and contaminated stuff. The EPA tests are much more extensive, but it's more the aesthetic stuff, or if you have arsenic or iron or something else like that, that you're going to be stuck with, you know. But if there's coliforms and other things, that means either the well is deteriorated or, you know.
Arsenic bad for you, or I mean, you treat that like it's just.
Yeah, there's
the
a
iron
standard.
content?
There's a standard for it, and it was recently lowered from 50 to 10. And in central Illinois, we see wells that are in the 200s.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
McHenry County's had it, but nothing around here.
Excuse me, I just want to point something out here. We have another speaker that's going to speak to water quality.
Okay,
So George has about 10 minutes left,
thank you.
and he's not in that area, although he's knowledgeable about it. We do have a doctor here to talk about it.
Wonderful.
Okay? So
Thank
you'll get those questions
Thank you very
answered.
much.
I just want to keep us
You
on
can
pace.
correct me if I've said something wrong.
This is a more of a geology question, but don't we have a good thick clay layer or something that keeps the water from infiltrating into our supply area in Prospect Heights?
Yes and no. If you look at the log, there's 30 feet of clay at the surface in this log, which is great. That'll get a lot of things. And then if something gets in past that, or there's an area where the sand comes up to the surface, you know, things move through sand very easily. But then you have another zone down here of hard pan, which is, you know, very hard clay, which was great. That'll keep things from getting in the water. So, and then this well, this is kind of a bad example because this well is kind of interesting because it is screened both in the sand and the limestone. So if one gets in the sand, it's going to transfer down to the limestone, which is, I don't know why they constructed it that way. I didn't really want to go out and get into that, but maybe you can tell me why that was done that way. This is not a well you drilled, it's a well somebody else drilled.
Well,
But
sometimes we do that if the well's a poor producer, it's an area where there's next to no water.
yeah,
They call that a pancake in the screens, where you kind of tap into both aquifers, but I think they kind of frown upon that nowadays.
yeah,
Not sure when was that drilled, 07, looks like?
yeah, 07.
Yeah,
Oh, no,
those-
it's older than that. That's just when we verified the
those
location.
guidelines, I mean, they're updating those every couple of years. Something that, depending on the area and where you're at, it's
Yeah.
the only way to actually get you know, the 5+ gallons a minute that you need, to sustain a house.
Yeah, and so there is other information you can get off of here, such as how deep the wells typically are, where the screen is, how depth of water here, 75 feet. This one they got 18 gallons a minute out of, so and they were trying to fill a pool, or I don't know why they wanted that much water, but the well was installed at 140 feet. The driller's estimated yield is 20 gallons a minute or more, and so. Yeah, so you can, you know, look at surrounding wells and kind of get an idea of what, you know, the neighboring wells are all doing. I think this is the last thing I wanted to show you was the IEPA database. This is what I was telling you about, where they've put everything online. So here is Rand Road and colors. Okay, we're right here, the Old Orchard Country Club. So all these dots are sites where IEPA has done some kind of investigation. You know, gas stations, industrial facilities, or wherever. So, you know, if you're curious about that facility next door, you can go online and look and see what happened. So I just happened to zoom in on Old Orchard Country Club here, and if I click on this site, there must be a dry cleaner right here somewhere called BJ Dry Cleaner. I don't mean to pick on them, but that's just the closest thing here. You can click on that, and then you pull up and it'll tell you something about that. So this says category site remediation, and there's a bunch of technical documents. So this means they probably contaminated the soil with dry cleaning compounds. which are kind of interesting in that, you know, you have all those protective clays, but dry cleaning compounds go right through them. And it's water doesn't go through it, but industrial solvents can go through clay. And so we've seen countless wells in Northeast Illinois go bad because they've been contaminated by industrial solvents. So you click on that and you can see that there's all these technical documents, you know, and so if the, you know, the company working on the site remediation or whatever has a report and it's gone to IEPA, it's now online. They got tired of making Xeroxes every time they got a FOIA request, and so they've just put everything online. So you can kind of look and see, and then there's often geologic information or other things or water quality tests and so forth on there. Yes?
The previous water committee investigated that dry cleaning site.
Oh, okay. Well, I just happened to randomly choose
Dry
it.
cleaning solution there, and the plume, they drilled, you know, test, I don't know what you call them, not wells, but holes in the ground to basically see where the plume was going. And it seemed to be going northwest, kind of paralleling Grand Road for the most part.
Yeah.
But Prospect Heights homes that are on wells aren't that far away. And while they didn't say that the wells in the immediate area needed to be tested for those contaminations right away, they did think that we did warn people in that area that that was a possibility. So, you know.
Yeah, I mean, to the average
happen.
homeowner, what does that warning mean, though? You know, is that they're not going to know what to do with that information is part of the problem. But yeah, there's some changes to EPA regulations that we're pushing for, and we're currently working in Springfield on some of that. So if it's a certain type of contamination that can get through the clays, that should be treated differently. And that's not done nationally anywhere. Everything is thought of as water soluble, but if it's not water soluble, if it's and has different chemical properties and physical liquid properties, then has to be treated differently. So that's one thing we're working on.
They did say that there's a well, that the dry cleaners is actually in Arlington Heights, and the apartment complex that's right behind that is on Arlington Heights City Water.
Mm-hmm.
So they did make a statement about not drilling a well in that immediate area, but they wouldn't anyway because they're on city water right there. They didn't take into consideration that the closest private well is only probably 200 or 300 feet away, 500 feet away.
Mm-hmm.
So it's relatively close.
Yeah. Yeah, and how water moves in the shallow subsurface can be very tricky because you have lots of drains and infrastructure and other things. So yeah, it might be going northwest along Rand Road. That might be due to how the road is drained, or, you know, the very shallow water table. But then the water table that the wells are on, that water is flowing east. So if it got downward, it would flow a different direction. So it gets complicated when it gets down there, yeah. So I just kind of wanted to give you an example of what we offer online that you can kind of go and look for yourself, you know, and get information.
URL for your website?
Just Google ISWS. It comes up, Illinois State Water Survey. And we're in the middle of revamping our webpage to make it a lot more user-friendly for someone who's looking for information, because, yeah, our website is a little out of date.
Great, George, thank you.
Okay.
Very informative, appreciate it.
Sure. Thank you. Thanks for changing the schedule for me.
All right. Okay, ladies and gentlemen, we're going to move right into the next speaker. Maybe after this speaker, we'll have a short break because we're a little behind schedule. So I'll bring up Dr. Lubner. She's a director of certification and training for the Water Quality Association. It's a private nonprofit. She's got a table set up out there. I'll bring her up. You can ask questions more about the quality issues. And Dr. Lubner, if you'd come up. Okay, well, she's setting up. I don't know if there's any questions about general ideas and topics while she's getting prepared. Anybody have anything to address with the Water Committee?
Water, Lake Michigan water, are we moving that towards anywhere, or is it?
Well, the Water Committee doesn't move it anywhere. It's a matter of the community creating the need and the program. Some of you are familiar. I was involved in SSA 6. I'm a resource for that purpose. We have a subcommittee that's there to serve people interested in SSAs, and recently did a video which will be published. Patrick will have it on the website about the creation and background on SSA. So if people are interested, that's available. Yes, sir.
What's SSA?
Special Service Area. Special Service Area essentially is where you have a need, the public and the community has a need for a particular project. It could be anything. It could be water, it could be a bridge, it could be a stop sign, whatever the case may be, or safety issues. And what you end up doing is you have your neighbors put together a petition, put together a program, follow the format, which is also on the website for the city, and bring it to the city council. They create an ordinance. The ordinance is created. There's a 60-day period. People can put in their concerns. At the end of that 60 days, it either passes or doesn't. So that's a simple explanation, but it's for any kind of service that helps the community. Yes, sir.
Either way on that issue, would there be a referendum like last time? Or will it be sort of pushed through?
Well, referendum is not, that's something that, you might do like at voting time, and election time. That's something different than what an SSA is.
No, I mean on the idea of Lake Michigan water. Last time it was voted down. Will there be another vote like that?
Nothing to my knowledge. That's something you'd have to address the city council on.
I mean, if the committee or whoever is pushing it is able to convince the city council, would at that future time, would there be a vote by the residents?
Well, anything, we're not a home rule community, and a lot of things have to go to city council. So our jurisdiction all comes from whatever Illinois state regulation is. So SSA is a way to bring something to the city council, but referendum, that has to get on a ballot. That's a different process. I'm not familiar with that process. Any other?
In order to find that video you were talking about with the water, and I'm going on the city website, Prospect Heights.
Well, it will be there. I know Patrick just completed it.
Okay.
So, I don't know where the link is yet. All I know is he's shown it to me. We put it together over the last few weeks.
But it's on Prospect Heights, start there, Prospect Heights website.
It should be somewhere within the Water Committee.
Oh, on the YouTube. This is the Prospect Heights website? Okay.
Any other general questions, comments, concerns while we're waiting for our next speaker? I guess maybe now if anybody wants to use the restroom or have some pastries real quick, you can run out and come back in a minute. Are we ready? No? Yes? Okay, here we go. Thank you.
Thank you. Good morning. So first thing I want to clarify, I was introduced as doctor before. I am a doctor, but not a medical doctor. So my PhD is in inorganic chemistry, and I want to make sure that you understand I will not be dispensing medical advice. So as a chemist, I like molecules, and I like facts, and I like knowing what's in the water before doing anything about it. Now, I know there's a big controversy going on here, whether well water is better or the municipally supplied lake water is better. I'm not going to touch that. What I will talk about is kind of what you can expect in both cases, because there are pros and cons to each. So let me start by telling you a little bit about the organization that I represent. I'm with the Water Quality Association. We're a trade association, a not-for-profit. Our members are the manufacturers and distributors of water treatment equipment. And there are a couple of things that our organization wants to accomplish. First of all, we want to be the recognized source and the advocate for the betterment of water quality. And our vision for this is that we can improve and enhance the quality of life through sustainable technologies and services. And we hold a number of core values at heart. And among these are ethics and integrity and science-based decision-making, therefore my molecules. So with that in mind, let's just talk a little bit about water. So of all the water on Earth, I'm sure you haven't heard this since high school, so nice refresher. Of all the water on Earth, we've got 97% of it as salt water in oceans. That's not exactly directly drinkable. About 2%, maybe less now, is in polar ice. And the 1% that's suitable for drinking, we only use 1% of that for actual drinking. Anybody know what we do with the rest of it? We flush it down the toilet. And of course, there's been a lot of advocacy for reducing our water footprint and for being more sustainable, and it's extremely necessary, but we need to take a look at how we do that. So here are a couple of examples. It takes 39,000 gallons of water to manufacture a new car. That's a lot. If you look at energy, water and energy are tied together because you need high purity water in order to be able to generate electricity. So coal-fired power plant will use up to 555 gallons of water to power 1,000 US homes for a day. You compare that to an ultra-efficient natural gas plant, it only uses 10 gallons of water for that same result. And now biodiesel and biofuels are huge, but look at what it takes to raise the plants that we're going to use as fuel. So not an easy solution to a very big problem. And of course, then once you get into the state where you are conserving water, now we've got the other end of the logistics. Our systems were designed a long time ago, and things have changed. We're switching to low-flow toilets and low-flow shower heads and instantaneous water heaters, which is good on the water conservation side, but we haven't been able to modify our systems, our distribution systems, because they've been around for so long, and it would be extremely expensive to do so. But having that low flow brings in other problems. We now have water that's sitting around, and we get bacterial growth. Now, don't get too excited about the bacterial growth. It's harmless bacteria, heterotrophs, which is present to everywhere, but nonetheless, it's there. And the municipal systems, when they leave a little bit of disinfectant in the system to act as kind of the first barrier against potential pathogenic bacteria, the fact that we have the harmless bacteria growing in the systems, that eats up the residual, and we have to add more. Our waste removal has become somewhat inefficient, and those toilets do have a job to do, and when they don't have either enough water or they're not designed to work on the lower amounts of volumes that they get, becomes a little problematic. So my point here, the solution is not easy, and it's going to take us a while to get there. So from there, let's take a look at kind of what water are we getting and what is in our water, regardless of whether it's coming from Lake Michigan or whether it's coming from the ground. And this is very general. What you saw in the previous presentation was actual measurements of the water quality, which is much more informative of what you actually have. But just in general, just to give you an idea, we have the hydrologic cycle, which is nature's recycling laboratory for water. And if we start up top here in the atmosphere, we have condensation of the water vapor. That water vapor, once it condenses, can come down as precipitation, so rain, snow, and depending on where it lands, the quality of the water that we then end up with for our use is going to differ. So if that precipitation is falling over a body of water, and we take that up, there are a couple of things that we can expect from surface water. We can definitely expect potential for pathogenic bacteria. So that's the harmful stuff. Because geese fly overhead, we've got fish and other living organisms in the water. Bacteria is something you can't escape, and some of it will be pathogenic. So when water is coming from a surface supply, our regulations require that it be automatically disinfected. However, if that water is falling over the ground, and let's say it's not hitting asphalt, let's say it's actually hitting vegetation and it can percolate through the ground, that then refreshes our groundwater. And then depending on what the geology is around there and how long that water has been sitting in contact with geology, we can have a lot of water hardness, we can have iron, or we can be in the Northeast where the water has a pretty low pH. There isn't a whole lot of limestone in the Northeast, so it remains relatively acidic. And then the type of piping that we put through, or put that water through, has to take that pH into account. So just general overview. How does that water then get to our house if we happen to have a municipal system? Well, it goes through a heck of a lot of treatment. And it's also, if this is a municipal or a public water supply, it's regulated. The regulations begin with the Safe Drinking Water Act, which Congress enacted in 1974, and the US EPA is tasked with carrying out. And the US EPA will delegate its authority to 49 out of the 50 states, such that the state EPAs, the Illinois EPA in our case, is going to then oversee that all of the regulations in the public water supply are carried out. So when the water comes from the source, depending on what that source is, whether it's a surface source or a groundwater source, it's going to go through a certain stage of treatment. And when that water comes out of this treatment, it meets all of the regulations, assuming there are no variances. It meets all of the regulations that are set by the US EPA. And then it goes into storage, and it's got to go through piping to get there, and then it's got to go through some more pipes to get to our homes. And some of those pipes have been around since the turn of the last century, if not earlier. And as we know, there is a lot of problem with our infrastructure. So as fantastic as it is, and as hard as the people at the plant work to make sure that the water that comes out of here meets all of those regulations, there are physical limitations. There's a reality that we have to deal with. And Flint, Michigan had to deal with that reality as well. And what went wrong there is that, unfortunately, when they changed from the Detroit water to the Flint River, I would hope that they took the water chemistry into account, but somewhere along the line, the regulations broke down. And the protection that was supposed to be put in place was not put in place. And it's going to take a hell of a lot of money to clean that up. Portland, Oregon, another recent issue, also lead related. There was lead found in the schools, which raised the question of filters. Well, they had filters. The problem is those filters weren't certified and tested for the lead removal. So I mentioned that there are regulations to protect our public water supplies. Keep in mind that for private wells, there are no regulations. The only time there's really a requirement, illegal requirement to test, is when the property is being sold. The Safe Drinking Water Act lays out a whole long list of contaminants, health-related contaminants, that the municipal water supplies have to be able to account for. And they have to meet what's known as the maximum contaminant level, the MCL. For private wells, like I said, there is no such regulations, but the US EPA primary standards, which is where all the health hazards are listed, are a pretty good guideline to go for when you're trying to figure out what should be in your water, what shouldn't be in your water, and to what extent. These are all listed on the US EPA website. So a question came up in the last presentation, what's aesthetic, what's a health hazard? This gets added. So the health hazards are listed out in the primary drinking water standards. There's also this table of secondary drinking water standards, and these are the aesthetics. This means that, or we might call a nuisance contaminant. There's not going to be a health problem related to these, but you might see orange staining, you might see those calcium deposits, and there might be some off smells, but it's not going to make you sick. So the US EPA does have a list of these. They're a recommendation, they're not a regulation, so the municipalities do not have to treat their water to these levels. If we take a look at what you might get in Cook County, and I'm looking at both municipal water and private well water, especially with, well, really, I was going to say especially with municipal water because it's surface water, but really well water can be subject to this as well. We've got microbiological contamination, and these are the pathogenic bacteria. E. coli, Giardia, Legionella is becoming more and more of an issue. Nitrates can be a problem if you're on a municipal system. They're supposed to treat to keep the nitrates within allowable levels. Pesticides came up. PFCs are perfluorinated carbons, so this is Teflon and firefighting foam, which has made its way into our water. This is not a regulated contaminant. In fact, very recently in the news, the EPA has announced that they, although they were considering regulation, they're backing off from a national regulation of these contaminants. Some states are introducing health advisories and will potentially regulate these contaminants at the state level. When the EPA delegates to the states are required to make sure that their regulations are at least as stringent as the federal, plus they can build on them. Disinfection byproducts are problematic. So if a system is putting in chlorine, a surface water system, that chlorine will first react with any naturally occurring organic matter, which surface water, we've got algae, among other things. And that can form, in some cases, carcinogenic byproducts. So there is a regulated level of what's allowed in the water of these byproducts, and the municipal systems are in constant struggle to balance having enough disinfection and yet maintaining a low enough level of those byproducts. And of course, lead, industrial waste, those are on the health hazard side. On the nuisance side, again, on the aesthetics, we've got water hardness, which not only is it a nuisance, you remember I mentioned that water and energy are tied together. When you're using water with 25 grains per gallon of hardness, which is kind of typical for wells in this area, that hardness, if it's not treated and gets into your water tank, it's going to plate out in the water tank. Essentially, it's going to act like a fire brick. So now that water heater has to use more energy to heat your water. So there's more of a reason to soften the water than just getting rid of those hard water spots. And of course, it sounds like everybody here is pretty familiar with iron. Iron bacteria is another issue. It makes treatment of iron a little more difficult. It involves some additional consideration. Hydrogen sulfide gas gives you that rotten egg smell. And then chlorine, if you're on municipal water, Lake Michigan, they're disinfecting. Chlorine gives you an off taste, an off smell, but again, it's not considered a health hazard, at least not at the levels in which it's present, supposed to be present in our water. Just give you an idea of what some of those nuisance contaminants look like. This is water with iron in it, and it's been sitting exposed to air, so if the iron was dissolved initially, now it's come out of the water, and the water's turned red. This is a cutaway from a water heater on hard water. You can see, because it's a little orange, there is some iron, but you definitely see that buildup on the bottom. And this is a picture of the iron bacteria. So the only way really that you're going to know that the health hazards are in your water, because the nuisances you can see. But the only way you're going to know that the health hazards are in your water is to test. The municipal systems put out an annual report. It's called a consumer confidence report. Sometimes they'll call it a water report. And the various cities and townships will have those on their website. You should be, if you're on municipal water, you should be getting that in the mail once a year. And what you will see is a listing of the primary standards from the EPA that the municipality tests for. Now, testing doesn't happen on a monthly basis for all of the contaminants. There are some that are tested for monthly, some are tested for daily, chlorine levels, for example. Some are tested for once every 6 years, depending on your system. And that kind of brings in another problem. And that is the testing schedule. So here's an example. This is from Evansville. That system tests once a year, I believe, or once every 3 years, I forget how frequently they're testing, for a pesticide. And a group came in and decided to see just how much of that pesticide is in the water when the system is not testing for it. So what they found, this, by the way, this red line, this is the allowed maximum contamination. This is what was measured once every, looks like 2 weeks. So what they're testing for is atrazine. And this is what was going into the drinking water. And we're starting with January. And this is a rural community with farms all around. And looks like right toward late spring, there was an application of the pesticide. And then the rains came and washed it down into the water. And after a while, that level went down. And this is when the municipality tested. Looks fine, it's below the MCL. And I mentioned the miles of aging pipe, our infrastructure. We lose quite a bit of water through that. Not only that, but when there's a break, there's a possibility to suck in bacteria and whatever else happens to be in contact with the water around that pipe. Municipal water, we have the regulations that I mentioned, but not everything can be regulated. When there are very real world related limitations. We can't afford, on a centralized level, we can't afford all of the treatment that might be necessary. Because if the municipality has to treat, it's got to raise its water rates. Not all of the contaminants are evenly spread out throughout the country. The US EPA is national. It has to make sure that everything is equal all across. So if one area of the country has a problem, but the rest of the country does not, that will not become a federal regulation. Question?
You have sacrificial anode rods in your water heater. They break down. It affords some protection to the water heater and possibly your system, but once it breaks down, where does it end up? Does it become part of the water? Is it absorbed into the water, or does it just end up at the bottom of your water heater tank?
So the anode rod question is pretty common. Not my area of expertise. I'm going to, got other people here that work with those pretty frequently, but yes, if it's corroding and it's dissolving and it's dissolving in the water heater, it is getting into the water. But once it's corroded and dissolved, your water is flowing through the water heater relatively quickly. So once that rod is gone, the problem is gone. The question is, how long does it take for it to corrode, and how much or how little is it putting in that water in the meantime? All right, so really the only way to know what's really in your water is to test for it. And when should you test? If you're on private well, you should be testing for coliform bacteria, for nitrates, once a year. You really need to do that. As was pointed out in the previous presentation, coliform and nitrates are an indication of a temporary problem. Your wells are built to protect your water from those contaminants, but that doesn't mean that something can't happen that allows them to get in there. If you find that you have those contaminants, the source of the problem needs to be tracked down and it can be eliminated. Those are contaminants that, one of the reasons that we test for them on an annual basis is because those are the type of contaminants that can make you sick now. Then there's the whole bunch that can make you sick later. Private wells usually don't have an issue with those unless it is something like arsenic, but as was pointed out, arsenic is not a problem in this area. In addition to that annual testing, you should test anytime you notice a change in your water. If your well was flooded, we had a lot of rains not too long ago, and there was quite a bit of flooding around, that would have been a good time, after that would have been a good time to test it. Also, if any part of your well system, the pump or anything in the distribution system is changed out, or if you have something new put in, you need to test the water after that. And again, you're testing for the bacteria. But it's also important to test your water if your household contains what's called a sensitive population, and that is anyone who's immunocompromised. For infants in particular, for pregnant women, infants less than 6 months of age, they have a problem processing nitrates. And you may have heard of blue baby syndrome, so you want to make sure if you have infants, pregnant women in the household and you're on a private well, that you know what the nitrate levels are. If you hear that your neighbor's having problems, or if you are near industrial or agricultural activities. Yes?
When you fill out one of those test forms.
You've got what, I'm sorry?
When you fill out one of the test forms to test your water, you can check 1,000,000 boxes.
Mm-hmm.
What's the minimum you need to?
Okay, so you have a lot of choices in terms of what to test for. What is the minimum? So the minimum, if you're on a private well, for health, you want to test for nitrates, you want to test for coliform. On the aesthetic side, you want to test for hardness, for water hardness. You also want to test for iron. And then if you have any off smells, and again, if you're maybe living near that dry cleaner, you want to test for volatile organics and synthetic organics as well. Again, if we didn't know that arsenic wasn't an issue here, I would recommend a test for arsenic.
Radon?
I'm sorry?
Radon?
For radon, radon is more of an air problem than a water problem. But if you have it in your basement, if your air has been tested for it, probably a good idea to test the water for that as well. Yes?
Where do you go to get your water tested?
Say it again?
Where do you go to get your water tested?
There are a couple options for testing water. If you're testing for health hazards, you want to make sure that you're using a state-certified laboratory. The Illinois EPA will maintain a list, and the local health department websites should also have a list of the certified labs. If you're testing for aesthetics, there are plenty of laboratories. I believe somebody here was using National Testing Labs. There's suburban labs in the area, but again, if you start with that list of certified labs, most of those certified labs will test for the aesthetics as well. And then sometimes the county health department will offer water testing as well. I know in Lake County they do.
Yeah. I've looked up getting tests lately, and you can get a test for $24 and they can go up to $800 for a test.
Yeah.
What?
So the more contaminants you test for, the more they're going to charge you.
Okay.
If you're on municipal water, there was a concern with lead because of all the construction that was going on, and the thought was that if there was any lead deposit, any particulates that happened to be in the pipes, that was going to get disturbed. That's a tough one because today it can be there, tomorrow the water moves through the pipes, or the fire hydrants get flushed and it's not there. If you're on a private well, again, you want to do that minimum of an annual coliform and nitrate test. If you are experiencing problems with hard water spots and you've got buildup around the fixtures, you want to do the hardness test.
So you're not talking the big dollar test, not an $800 test?
It shouldn't be an $800 test unless you are drilling a brand new well and
Okay.
you have no idea what's in the area and you want a thorough test of everything, then yeah. Some of the latest contaminants with the, I mentioned the perfluorochemicals. Pharmaceuticals have been in the news. They're present in very trace amount. There's not enough research out there yet to say if it's a problem, if it's not a problem. Really, it's very difficult to do that, but there is treatment now specific for certain pharmaceuticals, certain endocrine disruptors, but you first got to know that it's in your water, and I would imagine that that's the more expensive test. Okay, so if you are, the other time you want to really test is if you're thinking about putting in treatment. The water softener has to be sized properly, which means you need to know how much water hardness, and you need to have a pretty good accurate number of how much water hardness is in your water. You need to, if you've got that rotten egg odor, you got to track it down and figure out, is it coming from your well or is it coming from your water heater? So I sometimes get questions, well, what's the best treatment system out there? I don't know. It depends on what's in your water. So you got to start there. But there are quite a few options. So you can treat at the tap, or you can treat at the entry to your home's distribution system, so right before the water heater. Or for those of you on private well, before your storage tank. And we call the kitchen tap is usually referred to as point of use, whereas the whole house is known as point of entry, and this lets you have treated water at all the taps. So for example, if you do have a nitrate issue, and you're worried because you've got young kids or pets, the pets might be drinking out of the toilet, the kids might be consuming water if they're brushing their teeth, you might want to consider the whole house system. Otherwise, if you're pretty confident that despite the nitrate issue, you're only going to be drinking from that one kitchen tap, then a point of use solution makes sense as well. And again, you can match the treatment to the problem. So coliform bacteria is going to require some sort of disinfection. You've got chlorination options, UV, which is what's up here. There's, I believe is my chlorinator. As I mentioned, you can treat for nitrates, you can treat for the herbicides, pesticides at the point of use. You could do it at the point of entry, depending on how many taps you need treated, and there's, as you can see, a whole variety of things for the health hazards. There's likewise a huge variety of options for the nuisance. So my recommendation to you is that if you have questions on what's in your water and how you should treat it, you've got a couple of options of who to ask for recommendations. I'll get into the softener in just a second. The county health department will have information on, general information on what's going on in the water around you. And then if you want to get into treatment options, I would recommend talking with a water treatment dealer, because they typically have quite a bit of experience of the water in the area. They understand the treatment technologies, they understand potential pitfalls, etc., and they can come out to your house. Some of the contaminants can be tested for on-site, the nuisances, not the health hazards. And they can offer you a couple of solutions. Now, if you do currently have a water softener, chlorides came up in the previous presentation. Road salt is a huge problem when it comes to, especially for the wastewater plants, because they need to bring down that chloride level to a certain regulated level before they can send that water back into use. Unfortunately, in certain areas, like in Madison, Wisconsin, where there's significant penetration for water softeners, the softeners have been found to be a component of that chloride discharge as well. So the Madison Municipal Sewer District did a study where they looked at, is there any benefit to optimizing the softeners, or if you've got a 10 or 20-year-old system, would there be a benefit, would there be a significant benefit to replacing and updating that system? And they found that yes, you can optimize existing softeners and cut down that chloride discharge by 27%. A lot of this involves making sure that the softener is set correctly for the water hardness that you have. And then replacing the older ones with more efficient models, and not only that, but you're replacing the resin that's inside the softener a lot of the times, because after 10 years or so, that resin could start to lose its effectiveness in treating calcium and magnesium. So replacing the older softeners reduce that discharge by almost 50%. So if you have a softener and it hasn't been looked at in a while, you might want to consider having a local dealer come out and take a look at it. And of course, we have all these treatment technologies, but how do you know they're going to work? Well, there are a set of standards that the products can be tested to give you a peace of mind that you're getting the right thing for the right contaminant, but you need to know what to look for. There are a number of agencies that will test the product to a standard. Now, all of these agencies do get together and help design the standard. And then the NSF is the agency that will then submit that standard to the American National Standards Institute to make sure that it meets all the requirements of a standard. That means that all the stakeholders have been consulted, consumers have been consulted to make sure it's a meaningful standard, not just a way to get more money. So a standard is a test. It tries to simulate what that product is going to see in the field. And there are a couple of different aspects of that product's performance that are tested. And you can see I pulled this off of a Brita picture. There's the filter itself, which was tested under NSF. And then there's the pitcher, which the Water Quality Association tested to the same standards that NSF would have tested to, but Brita chose to have their filters tested through NSF, the pitchers tested through us. Where this becomes a little bit of an issue for the consumer is if you want to verify that somebody didn't just pluck that seal off of a website, copy it onto their packaging, is you need to go to that certifier's website and look up the product. So you need to know that if you want to check the filter, you got to go to the NSF website. If you want to check the whole pitcher, you got to come to us. What does a product test look at? First of all, it's going to make sure that the product and all of the components that are in contact with the water are not going to put anything dangerous into the water. At a minimum, goes through a pressure test to make sure that under the working pressures that we have in our municipal distribution systems, which are going to be higher most of the time than what's in the well, that the product can withstand, that it's safe for use. And then this, as I said, is a basic, and then there are performance tests. Not all the products that get certified are going to go through performance testing. Plus, there's a literature review to make sure that whatever claims the manufacturer makes, if they're saying that they are certified, that these claims match what the tests were. And there's a whole bunch of numbers that you need to look for. Because just to say that a product is certified doesn't tell you anything about how it was tested. Was it just tested for extractables and ability to withstand pressure? Or was it actually tested to see if it will remove particular contaminants? Notice that the standard 61, so all the standards are specific test instructions. So the standard 61 is only looking at whether a product is safe for use with drinking water and withstands the pressure. So if you see a drinking water system that says, you know, we do this, we do that, and all of this, and yet their certification is only for 61, well, then they've only been tested for structural integrity and safety for water contact. Doesn't say anything about whether they can take out particular contaminants. So what are the numbers? We can look at standard 42, which is looking at improvement of taste and odor. Cation exchange softeners, we'll go through testing for 44 to make sure that, yes, they can reduce the hardness down to less than 1 grain per gallon. 55 is specific to UV systems, and there are a couple of different standards under 55. There's a Class A system, which is something that you can use in place of chlorine as your primary disinfectant. And then there's a Class B system. The Class B systems you should only use on water that's already tested microbiologically safe. And those are the UV systems that typically go under the sink. They're the ones that are the just-in-case systems. If you have a Class A system, it's going to have a lot of bells and whistles, literally, including the ability to shut off the water if the lamp fails. There's a standard for health claims, such as removal of bacterial cysts, volatile organic chemicals, so the dry cleaner, arsenic, lead, so on. And when you look these up, you got to check specifically which of those contaminants were tested, because something's certified to standard 53 doesn't mean that it can remove all of those contaminants. So the certifier website will list those specific ones. ROs are tested under standard 58, and again, it's going to be to specific contaminants. Standard 60, if you're using chlorine bleach to disinfect your well, make sure it's been certified to that standard 60, because that means that it's safe to use on drinking water. You don't want to go out and buy the standard chlorine bleach that's sitting on the shelf, because it, especially, well, if you do buy that one, it's got to be EPA certified for drinking water. Okay. Otherwise, it can have some heavy metals in it that you don't want getting into your drinking water. It's got all the perfumes, even if you buy the non-perfume stuff. So if you're buying chlorine bleach for disinfecting your water, make sure it's been tested to standard 60, or it says that it's EPA approved for drinking water use. Plumbing components go through standard 372, which is well, lead-free is a little bit of misnomer. They're allowed to have a little bit of lead in there. And then the standard 401 is the newest for pharmaceuticals. And really there's only just a few manufacturers and types of treatment that's been tested to 401. That's mainly carbon systems, so carbon filters. All right, how do you navigate the website? Yes?
What about swimming pool chlorine, liquid chlorine?
Again, you have to check and make sure that it's been approved for EPA. I'm pretty sure that most of what you can put in the swimming pool should be that grade, but you have to double check. The certifier websites will differ a little bit, but most of them will let you put in the manufacturer brand or model. And you can also look for a particular product standard or a specific contaminant that you're trying to reduce. This is probably, unless you're looking to check the certification of a particular brand, the reduction claim is probably the best place to start. Okay, and when you put that in, you're going to get a bunch of results. In this case, I was looking up nitrate. So you see the manufacturer and you see the standard that it's been tested to. Clicking on a particular manufacturer, will give you an explanation of what the standard is. And then it'll give you the model number plus what it's been tested for, which specific contaminants. I mentioned that there are definitely local experts you could talk to, county health department personnel, and we maintain a list of our members as well as those that have gone through our training and professional certification.
Excuse me.
Yes?
That prior screen where you said you click on that, prior to that, you can click on your water filter system and the actual model will show up and it'll show what.
And it'll tell you.
Where do you find that screen?
So I'll show you where this screen lives, but this is where you put in your manufacturer model. So this is our website. Oops. It's wqa.org, and if you picked up our yellow Water Treatment for Dummies book, the website's listed on there. And right on the front page, we have find certified products, water treatment providers, and certified professionals. So you can search by zip code, and I was doing this for Barrington, so this is mainly Lake County, but you will get a list of, and I also, you have a choice of to look for dealers only or manufacturers. If you're looking for somebody to come out to your house, you want the dealers. And so you can, there's a checkbox on a previous screen that I missed, but you can check that off and look for the dealers. It'll give you a listing of, by distance from your zip code of the companies. And if you notice here, we've got a column on certified professionals. So if you look at Angel Water, for example, they've got this view rather than no. And if you click the view, did I do it? I didn't. But if you click the view, it tells you who their certified professionals are. So in closing, test your water. Don't try treating it until you know what's in it. And you do have resources with the local professionals. I recommend taking a look at our website. We have a number, in addition to an electronic version of the Water Treatment for Dummies, which is a nice overview of what's in the water, what are some options for treating. So in addition to this, we have other consumer-focused materials where you can educate yourself a little bit about the contaminants and treatment options. And of course, you can look up those certified professionals and water treatment providers near you.
Okay, thank you, Dr. Lubner. Appreciate it. She's got a table out there for anybody who'd like to pick up some materials, get some additional information. We're going to move things along, and we've got just one more presentation, probably more of a question and answer. People are interested in the real estate market, the value of their home with and without wells. And we've got an expert here in Prospect Heights. She's been around since 2001, and she's the #1 Prospect Heights representative in the real estate market. Dawn Simmons, if you'll come up. You can probably ask her questions. She can tell you a little bit about what she's seeing on buyers and sellers, what markets demographics are, you know, looking at wells and so forth. So, Dawn, if you want to give them a few words.
Thank you. I'm Dawn Simmons. This is my son Josh that's been working with me for about 2.5, 3 years now. We live in Prospect Heights since 1988. When I came to the area, I was from Chicago, so having a well was something I didn't know anything about, and you get used to it real quick. There's nothing really to be afraid of from one. We have clients basically that are moving here right now. The big thing is our lots. When you want somebody that wants land, it's better they're close to everything without going all the way out to Long Grove or Hawthorne Woods or Barrington. So that's where we're getting our buyers that are moving into the area, except that a lot of them do get a little worried about well water. So it is the younger people instead. I have some older clients that want ranches that won't come to the area because of well water, even though I keep trying. Which I might grab some of her dummy books to hand out to them. Might help. Someone asked me today if we did have city water, if I thought it would raise our values. I do not believe it would raise our values. It would help bring some people that don't like well water into the area, but it's not going to increase the value of our homes, I don't believe. You got anything to add?
Yeah. Yeah, so like she was saying, a lot of the older people are kind of afraid of well water because of the treatment aspects of it. I carry my grandpa's 50-pound bags of salt in every month. A lot of people that have never had well water are terrified to do that. No, I do mine in his. That's plenty. But yeah, people my age really like. I bought my house too. We don't live together anymore. But now I stayed in Prospect Heights, and it doesn't bother me at all. You know, she always says, she convinces everyone that there's no water bill. And so like values wise, so there is the neighborhood that you live in with the SSAs instead of, so he has city water. So one neighborhood in Prospect Heights has city water instead of well water. And they have an SSA attached to their tax. So their taxes can be 20 plus in that neighborhood, 15, 20, 25,000. So that actually, for them, kind of affected their value negatively. We've had a few listings in that neighborhood that the values really went down because nobody wants to have a $400,000, $500,000 house with $22,000 in taxes. It's kind of out there, a little too much. But I mean, if we ended up with all city water and lower taxes, it would be a good thing. But currently, that situation didn't work out value-wise.
Anybody have any questions?
Yeah, absolutely. I have a couple of questions. What component of that tax bill you're talking about would be $15,000, $20,000, $25,000? What component of that is the water part of it for the new water system that they're paying for?
I believe it's only 10%.
What, I'm sorry?
10%?
10%? So you're saying that if it was a $15,000 water or tax bill, it would be at $1,500 a year?
That's what I think so, yes.
And that's enough to scare people?
The taxes in that neighborhood, well, they were their higher price houses because they were newer ones in the area.
Yeah.
Their taxes are a lot higher than,
True.
say, my neighborhood,
But
where I'm
if
right
the
across
taxes
the next neighborhood
without the
over.
water, the taxes would still be $13,500.
Correct.
For $15,000.
Right.
I mean, you know, what I'm saying is that people have to accept that there's a whole lot of other taxes on that tax bill
Besides the water. Yes.
Yeah. Also, I think I disagree with what you're saying about city water not having an effect on property value, even though it's hard to prove 100% one way or the other. But my proof of this is this. I can believe that there's a lot of people that would look at the well situation, not having experience operating a well on their own, being a little skeptical of purchasing a property that has a private well. But how many people do you think come to Prospect Heights because they want a private well?
None.
I just think...
They come to Prospect Heights for the bigger lot.
Yeah, right. So I'm saying they're accepting the well as part of the deal if they want the land.
Correct.
But if they had city water, they might like it a lot better.
There could be other buyers that we could bring into the area with it, yes,
Right.
that wouldn't look in our area.
The more potential buyers, I would think, would have an influence over the actual value.
Possibly.
That's all.
Anyone else?
There's a couple of communities that I've witnessed over the years that did get an SSA, or they did have acquired Lake Michigan water, and the residents had hoped for an increase in their property value, and they didn't get it. Heron's Landing, Long Grove, Foxford Hills, Cary. There's Inverness, part of Inverness, which is south of Barrington. They had to bring water down Barrington Road, and they didn't get. Now they might have had more active home buyers, I don't know, but the property value didn't jump like they had, had hoped it would. My SSA in Cary is a negative on selling. I've been trying to sell my house right now, and I'm in Foxford Hills, and the SSA is still, my broker says it's a negative for my home. So I don't know.
Well, just the fact that it has an SSA kind of scares some people.
And it's just an extra tax, they just say. And it is, like you said, $1,200 more a year on an overall tax bill, but still, it's enough where people they look at that dollar amount and they think
$100 more a month.
$20,000 more for my house than the next house, just because it's got a well water system that's got a water softener attached to it. So, I don't, just that experience I've seen over the years, I just thought I'd share it with you.
But the operation of your well isn't free. And that they can't tell by looking at your tax bill.
The operation
So,
of your private
you're
well?
not comparing apples to apples when you're
Oh, yeah,
telling
no, I
people.
agree. No, yeah, I totally agree with that.
Excuse
yeah,
me, excuse
absolutely.
me. Instead of getting, into this, and I'd be happy to address some of these things, we can let Dawn answer any more general questions, and if Dawn has anything else to say, otherwise I'll come up there. Dee, you have a question?
He loves the water.
So, I want to buy a house in Prospect Heights, but I understand it has a well on it. What do I need to know about that well before I purchase the house?
You don't have a water bill. The well gets tested upon sale. The seller does have to pay to have the water tested to make sure that it's safe, there's no bacteria, and that the pressure is the amount of pressure that should be coming out. The regular maintenance, it depends on the area on Prospect Heights. You'll see the equipment that's in the house. A lot of the area is only salt. Some have iron on them. Some other areas do have a few more machines that they have on there. But there's no well bill is what, no water bill is what we have to keep pushing for Prospect Heights.
So now I've got another property in Prospect Heights, and I'm on a well, and I want to sell my property. What do I need to do before I put it up for sale? Considering I have a well and there's like, you know.
Nothing till you're under contract. So, I mean, if you wanted to be like extra careful, you can get it tested beforehand. But once you're under contract, it's built into the general contract that's accepted for Northwestern Illinois, that the seller is responsible to pay for the well test, which, yeah, like she said, tests for the bacterial levels, water pressure, and it tests the well cycle, if it's cycling correctly.
Is there anything I should be looking at when I go into a property? If I'm buying in Prospect Heights, should I look for, you know, rust on the well cap, or should I be looking for, you know, anything in the grass that might give me an idea that maybe something's kind of funky there?
No, but there are people that will go around the different faucets, turn them on and be smelling
Smelling
it,
them.
or smelling their hand, or they'll even taste it.
But like some of the water experts said, that's more the aesthetic side of it,
Right.
not the actual safety, no health issues.
The other thing on selling it is if you own it or if you're renting it, the equipment, which will say on the MLS sheet, but a lot of times, I mean, if it's older equipment, the people know they're gonna have to be putting more in, new ones in, but if it's rented, then they're gonna be removed from the house before it closes, unless the new owner wants to keep renting it from them. So that's something that they're gonna have to look into when they're buying it. Like I have one right now, actually, that's rented, so I gotta find out from them as soon as I'm through all my inspection issues, if they wanna keep that on, or otherwise it's gonna be out of the house before they close.
So if I were to go look for a realtor to help me navigate areas with wells, would I look to the realtor to say, hey, you know what? Take a look at that equipment, and there's some kind of funky.
No, because when you buy the house, the home inspector will look at it. So he'll tell you if he thinks something is not working, and then that'll be a negotiation point during your 5-day attorney approval inspection period. So if he thinks that, you know, the holding tank is going to bust or something, or he'll say, you know, things are really old, you might want to budget for something in the future. And the water will be tested before closing, so you know it's safe.
Sure, I can kind of piggyback on that. Buyers and sellers alike, they'll get contact with us to have a well evaluation done. It's about a 15-point inspection that we come. We take a look at the well, the water line, the pump, the tank. We go out the pump. We check amperage. We check all the mechanical workings of well equipment, which is something we work with a lot of realtors as well. They'll call us when they have a potential buyer or a potential seller. Not just the buyers or sellers that want that. It's kind of all across the board. So, I mean, that's also usually the realtors will contact us as water well professionals to come and inspect all equipment from top to bottom. And more than likely, being around, like we have all sorts of records that date back to the 60s, you know? So we can always find out, or have a way of finding out something more than what the potential buyer or seller knows.
So who would be responsible for that cost? Would it be the seller or the buyer, or whomever wants to decide?
Whoever wants it.
So I want to buy a house.
Sometimes it's a buyer, sometimes it's the realtor, sometimes, like you said, it's worked out, negotiations in the contract.
If there's something wrong with the equipment, but you do have to, in our contracts for Illinois, there is the paragraph that if you have a private well, it has to be tested and it's the seller's responsibility.
But if they want to go like a more in-depth test, like of the full out inspection, it would probably, if the buyer wanted to do it, it would be on, most likely that
would
would be on the buyer.
What is
$170. Takes about an hour to do.
What is the pressure requirement for a two-story house?
Yeah, that would be more, what's the pressure?
Requirement?
30? Why do I want to say
What's the
30?
cutoff point?
Everybody, it's not really a requirement. Some folks, depending on the system, run between, it's always typically a 20-pound spread. Either 30 to 50 pounds or.
Sorry, I had 30 in my head.
50 to 70. There's systems that have a constant 70-pound pressure. It's every well system's different.
Well, I know the pressure switches have got a 20-pound differential normally.
It does,
square
you
feet
can
anyway.
adjust that accordingly too. You can shorten that or spread that out. But typically, I believe you need 5+ gallons a minute to sell a home.
Right.
Okay, thank you.
Anything else you have to say, or?
No.
Okay, thank you.
We're good.
Thank you,
Thank
Don.
Okay, ladies and gentlemen, we're going to wrap things up. I'm not going to do a full presentation. I'll just address a few of the issues and wrap things up here. I do have to get going by about 1 o'clock today. And one of the issues that came up under the real estate, it really comes down to personal choice. You know, we have a beautiful area here. I always called Prospect Heights a diamond in the rough. We have beautiful lots, great location, access to great highways. When it comes to real estate and choice, that's what we're seeing. As we get older, we don't want to deal with the aspects of handling a well. Younger people don't care. That's just natural. It's just like people go to ranches rather than 2- and 3-story buildings. It's just nature and how people grow. With respect to finances, one of the things I would like to correct is when it comes to taxes, the majority of our taxes are eaten up by the municipality and schools, things that many of us don't have children in, but we still pay them. An SASA is not much different. People that may not want to have water, they're still part of the SSA. They may not like it. When it comes to the cost, from experience, our SSA is halfway paid for. In another 10 years, it's fully paid for. We'll actually have a decline in our taxes and have a water system, whereas the rest of the community won't, as far as single-family homes. So there's pluses and minuses. As a water committee chairman, I've tried to make sure that we are fair and do what's right for the community, and that is people are interested in water. Maybe about 40% on our last survey would like to have a Lake Michigan water system. That's a significant number of people. Whereas about 50% are opposed, and the remainder are unsure. That's based on a 2-year-old survey we did of 823 residents in the single-family areas of Prospect Heights. So as far as SSAs, those of you who are interested in SSAs, we have a lot of information on the website. You can download it. You can contact us, come to a meeting. And for people who are concerned about the cost and prefer well, for whatever the reason may be, we really think you need to start testing, because there's no regulation you have to, but you're taking a risk. If you have a system that's not tested, we would highly recommend that you consider doing it. We have some free bottles out there and some resources. Test your well. And if you're looking that you'd rather have city water, in the meantime, you're on the well, you're going to have to deal with it. And that's the purpose of today's forum. You're not going to get Lake Michigan water in a matter of weeks, months, or maybe even years unless your community moves things along. So we have to make sure that you are getting potable water and aware of the availability of things that are going to make it safe. So with that, I'll close it, and if you have any questions in general about the water committee, what we can do, things like that, or the other committee members, please feel free to contact us. Any questions? Yes, sir.
Have you gotten any feedback yet from sources that will sell us water? Do we have a source?
I'm not sure of your question. Where American Water sells us the water at the moment.
But
and the rest of the city.
Okay.
So Rob Roy, the condos, the apartments, every place that is a multifamily area has Lake Michigan water. It's just the single-family standalone residences, which is about 2,200, somewhere in that area.
But as I understand it, we only have 2 sources that we can approach if, the majority of people sign on to bringing Lake Michigan water here. Am I not correct? Or?
explain what you mean by two sources. Give me a definition.
Well, entities that are willing to sell water to Prospect Heights.
Well, really, at the moment, it's just one. It's American Water.
It's one pipe coming from Evanston, right? I mean,
They're like a reseller, just like your electricity. How many times are you approached to purchase your electricity from ABC Electric and XYZ Electric? But it's all coming through the same infrastructure. All the water comes from Lake Michigan. It comes through the same plumbing, same piping. It's just a matter of who controls the sale to the ultimate consumer, and at that time, it's American Water. Any other questions? Okay, thank you for all attending.